I wanted to cover this story with you guys today. This came across my feed. I guess it's been out there for the last day or so. But as you guys know, I'm not exactly excited for the Madam Web movie. I don't know anyone who's excited for it, outside of wanting to see it to see just how bad it is and then reviewing it and making fun of it, which I feel like that's what I'm going to be doing and everyone else is going to be doing. But, Chad, I guess it's getting even sadder. It's getting even more pathetic because apparently this has come out via a specific insider. All the Madam Web reshoots that they were doing reportedly removed major Spider-Man connections. Not because it's you know what, we want Madam Web to stand on her own. She's her own character, her own woman, her own person. She doesn't need Peter Parker. No, that's actually not what happened. It's actually much more sad and pathetic and, well, troubling, I guess. And so I wanted to read this, and then I can kind of share my reaction, hear your guys' thoughts as well. But Madam Web, this is, of course, is from CBR.com. Thank you, CBR. Madam Web reportedly could have featured an appearance from Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man before Sony elected to remove all connections to the fan-favorite web-slinger. According to insider Jeff Snyder on the Hot Mic, Sony initially wanted Garfield to be the main Spider-Man universe. Don't put that on him, man. Don't trap him with Morbius and Kraven the Hunter and Venom. Come on now. Beginning with Madam Web. However, these plans were later scrapped and Tom Holland's Spider-Man was chosen as the movie's wall crawler. Snyder continued that all mentions of either Spider-Man were then removed during reshoots after Sony realized the timelines didn't add up for either version to appear. Madam Web was apparently going to be set in the 1990s and early 2000s until reshoots removed any reference to the movie taking place in a particular year. How can you, and this is the thing that just so confuses me, how can you get that far into production and realize, oh, shit, the time period in which either Andrew Garfield or Tom Holland is supposed to show up in or is conceived in wouldn't make any sense for what we're doing right now in the 90s. How far did you get into making this movie before you realize that mistake? That, to me, is well, to make it all sense, have it make sense, we want to make sure that, when the Spider-Man's born in the right time period, or else this would all be a major clusterfuck. And that's exactly what happened. It is incredibly bizarre to me that is what happened with this film. And again, it just goes to show you. It really just goes to show you that I feel like Sony, at least this specific division within Sony, when it comes to these live-action films, these live-action Spider-Man films, doesn't have any idea what they're doing. How do you not know that? It doesn't make any sense. So, again, it's just more fuel to the fire, to the inferno that is these terrible live-action Spider-Man-less Spider-Man movies focusing on all these D-list, characters like Madam Web and Morbius. I just don't get it. Are they literally that incompetent? Clearly that's the case. They are literally that incompetent. I don't understand. Wow, it's hilarious. It's hilarious, but at the same time, it's people were paid millions of dollars to make this movie, and our money that people work a lifetime to achieve, all the schmucks and schlubs like us would work a lifetime to achieve, and these people were paid that kind of money, and they made such catastrophic mistakes as this. It's wow, you really don't need to have talent to get far in life or even in the film industry. It is incredible. It's fascinating how far failure can get you and incompetence can get you. It's just who you know. But what about you guys? How do you guys feel about this? How do you feel about this, chat?
5 minutes later.
Where the hell was the script supervisor? I know, but that's wait a minute, guys. We got to make sure this, that's before you even do principal photography. That's early pre-production. You're let's make sure we get this right. But they were already shooting. Oh my God.
12 seconds later.
Here's the thing. I'm going to keep reading your guys' comments. I, for the life of me, don't understand as to why after Spider-Man No Way Home, which didn't that make nearly $2 billion? I want to say it made a lot of money. Let me look up the amount of money that movie made, but I want to say it definitely made over $1 billion. It made over $1 billion very, very quickly. Was it like 1.9? Because it's Sony's highest grossing film of all time. Let me actually see. Was it 1.9? It was $1.9 billion. $1.9 billion, one of the highest grossing movies of all time. There was so much hype surrounding that film. Of course, yeah, a lot of the hype being that, are they going to bring back Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield? Inevitably, they did, along with all these villains from the past films, like Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin and Alfred Molina's Doc Ock. And, it was a huge, critical and commercial success, and I really enjoyed the film quite a bit. My whole thing was, if I was a Sony executive, and I was like, guys, this movie is probably going to be our highest grossing film of all time. We're going to make so much money off of this. I feel like we should capitalize on the inevitable success, and we should definitely put into production. Let's get a screenwriter on this, a solo Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield adventure where it's the two of them as the Spider-Man going off and doing something together. Like, why wouldn't you greenlight that? Like, Tobey Maguire I know, like, when he was originally Spider-Man stuff, he had issues with his back and he didn't want to do it forever. But I think, he had some issues behind the scenes later in his career, and he didn't, like, act for a while. And then he came back, everyone was excited for it. And he actively was like, yeah, I want to keep being Spider-Man. Like, he seemed, like, so excited to be Spider-Man again. And so it's like, he's game. And I know Andrew Garfield, he did not have a good experience on making those movies, obviously. And, not his fault. It's just, the directing and the screenwriting, it just didn't coalesce. But hey, I think his Spider-Man was redeemed in a number of ways with that movie, getting a lot more to do, and some interesting things I thought were kind of hinted at with his Spider-Man and what was going on in his life. That was interesting, Like, why don't you then just immediately go, hey, guys, you love Spider-Man No Way Home? Well, guess what? 2 years from now or whatever, we're going to release whatever the Spider-Man film is going to be with Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire. That's what you do. That's what you capitalize on. Obviously. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? And the fact they didn't, the fact that was that even brought up? I can't believe it. I don't know. And I'm just a schmuck. I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like that would probably make a lot of money. And I know Andrew Garfield's probably busier than Tobey Maguire. So even if, Andrew Garfield's like, you know what, I'm glad I came back, but I don't want to do another one. I'm like, that's fine. That's okay. But then do Spider-Man 4. Like, do your Holland Spider-Man 4, but then do a Tobey Maguire Spider-Man 4 as well. It's like, okay, now it's 20 fucking years later. He's older. He hinted at he's with MJ. There's so much potential with that. Like, why didn't you do that? That to me is insane that you don't capitalize on that. So, but no, we gotta make Madam Web, and we want to have Andrew Garfield. But then we realize, like, oh shit, that doesn't make any sense. Let's bring in Tom Holland, even though he wouldn't have been born in the '90s, like at all. They established that he's much younger. He would have been born in the 2000s. So what are you doing? What the fuck are you doing? So, oh my god. Oh, it's nuts. It's nuts.
6.5 hours later.
It's really insane how a studio that put Across the Spider-Verse and No Way Home, which both felt love letters to Spidey, is the same releasing Madam Web and Craven the Hunter. So, in regards to both of those, let me address Across the Spider-Verse and the Spider-Verse. To this day, I do not think Sony knew what they had with that movie. I just don't think they knew what they had. It feels like to me that with that first film, it had the budget that it had, which I want to say it's under $100 million, which is like pretty inexpensive for like a big blockbuster animated film. I know I think Across Spider-Verse was $100 million, but I think Into the Spider-Verse might have been under. But correct me if I'm wrong. But I feel like because the budget was relatively so low, and they let those filmmakers and they let the producers, Phil Lord and Chris Moore's like, oh yeah, do whatever. Yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, we're gonna make our live action Spider-Man movies like Venom. Okay, that's our priority right now. And they had no fucking clue what they had with that film. And then the movie, which again, it wasn't like it did very well. It wasn't like a huge blockbuster, but it did well. But then it just kind of proliferated on VOD, and people were like, "This is amazing!" And this, it won an Oscar, of course. And then, like with Across the Spider-Verse, oh shit! And so now I to this day, I don't think they knew what they had. And in regards to No Way Home and in the Tom Holland films, that's Marvel. That's like Marvel Disney. That's like MCU. I know that those are Amy Pascal and Avi Arad and stuff and whatever, but I do not believe that they had as as big a hand creatively in those movies as like someone like a Kevin Feige or John Watts did. I feel like I think Disney had a lot more creative control of those films than Sony did. Because it just doesn't feel like none of those movies felt like a Sony Spider-Man film. I feel like those are the two reasons. Why the Venom movies and Morbius and what Madam Web and Craven are, those just like, yeah, this feels like Sony. That's what I believe. I don't know if there's anything definitively out there that says that. It just feels that way.